The old wall clock in my living room ticks too loudly now. It used to sound like a rhythm. Now it sounds like a countdown. The rain outside taps the windows, steady as breath. The kind of rain that stays too long, that seeps into walls and silence. My home smells faintly of dust and cold tea. The kind of quiet you get when people pretend to care. Somewhere down the hallway, I hear whispers. My name. My time. The clock ticks again. Each sound feels like a question I'm not ready to answer. I sit in my chair by the window and watch water stream down the glass. Each drop races another to the bottom. Some make it, some don't. I wonder which one I am. The whispers grow softer. A door closes. Footsteps fade. And I'm left alone with the clock and the rain and the growing certainty that my family is not praying for my recovery. They're praying for my funeral. The clock ticks. I count to 60. Then I start counting the days I have left to prove them wrong. You wouldn't recognize me from before. My name is Alira Venn. I am 36 years old, a guidance counselor in a small coastal town, known for helping other people untangle their pain. Funny thing about empathy, it doesn't save you when your own family sharpens it into a blade. After my father's death 3 years ago, I took care of everything: the house, the bills, even my mother's medications before she passed last winter. My siblings, Soren and Mariel, called me the anchor. But anchors don't float. They sink first. Now, after the heart episode last year, I've been confined mostly to home. They insisted it was for my rest. They just didn't say whose rest. Soren is 42. I work in finance. I always wore suits that cost more than my monthly salary. Mariel is 30. A real estate agent with perfect nails and a smile that never quite reaches her eyes. They visit often now. Too often. Bringing meals and medicine and questions about my will. The rain keeps falling, and I keep wondering when caring became waiting. Soren keeps my keys now, to the drawers, to the car, to the life I used to live. He says you shouldn't stress yourself, Alira. His smile never reaches his eyes anymore. Mariel brings me food and new pills each day. Different colors, same promise. But I started noticing something 3 weeks ago. Some pills made me drowsy. Others made me forget what day it was. One morning I woke up and couldn't remember if it was Tuesday or Friday. When I asked what the pills were, Mariel said the doctor's new prescription. The doctor never called me. I checked my phone. No messages, no voicemails, no appointments I'd forgotten. That was when I started writing everything down. Hidden in an old recipe book my mother left me. Every pill, every date, every lie. The rain tapped against my window that night like Morse code. And I realized I wasn't losing my mind. I was losing my freedom, one small pill at a time. The clock kept ticking, but now I was listening. It rained the day I realized they were waiting for me to disappear. The thunder rolled like a warning, soft but certain. I watched drops gather on the window until they blurred into one long stream, like time itself losing shape. I thought of all the times I'd forgiven them. The arguments over Dad's estate. The jealousy when I got promoted at work. The way they mocked my small achievements because they couldn't control them. Soren once told me I was too soft for my own good. Mariel said I gave too much to people who didn't deserve it. Now I understand. They weren't worried about me. They were worried I'd give everything away before they could take it. The rain streamed down in rivers. I pressed my hand against the cold glass and felt the vibration of each drop. Even the rain felt like it knew the truth. I wasn't their sister anymore. I was their inheritance, and they were tired of waiting for me to die naturally. A man called one evening, said his name was Nayland Croy, an independent auditor reviewing a transfer linked to my name. I just need to confirm, he said, that you authorized the property deed adjustments. My fingers froze around the phone. The rain outside had stopped. Everything felt too quiet. I didn't sign anything, I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. There was silence on the other end. Then a low exhale. Then someone else did, he said, using your name. That was the first time I felt my pulse race in weeks. Not from fear, from awakening. Like something inside me that had been sleeping finally opened its eyes. What kind of adjustments? I asked. He paused. Your childhood home. The deed's been transferred to your siblings. Joint ownership. Signed last month. But I was in the hospital last month, I whispered. Exactly, he said. And that's why I'm calling. The rain started again. Soft, approving. Like the sky knew I'd finally woken up. 2 days later, I found a blue folder on the dining table. My signature appeared on the last page of several documents. Estate agreements, policy updates, power of attorney forms, all dated during the weeks I could barely remember my own name. Mariel's handwriting filled the margins. Notes about disbursement, timeline. Soren's initials, signed as witness. I laughed, quietly, almost kindly, because the rain had stopped that morning, and I'd woken up with clarity sharper than pain. I knew what they wanted, but they didn't know what I was capable of. I took photos of every page with my phone. Then I put the folder back exactly where I'd found it. That night, Mariel came to check on me. You look better today, she said. I smiled. I feel better. She frowned slightly, like she wasn't sure if that was good news or bad. I sipped the tea she brought me, then poured it into the plant beside my chair when she left. The plant died 3 days later, just like I would have. I called Nayland back the next morning, told him everything. The pills, the signatures, the way time had disappeared from my life in small pieces. He didn't sound surprised. Just be careful. Send me copies, he said. Don't let them know. For weeks, we spoke in code. He told me what to look for. False transactions, forged consent, quiet theft. Each night, I would sit by the ticking clock, rain whispering against the glass, documenting my life like a crime scene. I found bank statements in Soren's briefcase, withdrawals from accounts I didn't know existed, donations made in my name to charities that didn't exist. Insurance policies changed to name them as beneficiaries. It wasn't fear that kept me awake anymore. It was for a purpose. The clock ticked louder now. Not like a countdown, like a heartbeat, strong and steady, reminding me I was still alive. And they had no idea what was coming. The rain fell softer each night, like it was learning patience too. One morning, Soren forgot his key ring on the kitchen counter. He'd left in a rush after taking a call outside. I heard the word insurance through the window. When the house emptied, I took that ring. The sound of the keys jingling felt like rebellion. My hands shook as I opened the locked drawer in his study. Inside were receipts, bank slips. My name scrawled across authorizations I never made. Transfers to offshore accounts, property sales, life insurance updates. Everything organized in neat folders labeled by year. I took photos. Every page, every line of their betrayal recorded, pixel by pixel. When I returned the keys to the counter, the rain started again. This time soft, approving, like the sky was proud of me. Soren came home an hour later, found his keys exactly where he'd left them. He looked at me suspiciously. "You been up?" "Just resting," I said. He nodded, but his eyes lingered on me longer than usual, like he was trying to see if I remembered something I shouldn't. That evening, as the storm built outside, the old wall clock stopped ticking. I stared at it for a long time, waiting for another sound. None came. The second hand hung frozen between 4 and 5. The rain pounded harder against the windows. Thunder rolled somewhere far away. It was strange. The silence didn't scare me. It steadied me, because I realized something sitting there in the quiet. The clock wasn't counting down my life anymore. It was waiting for their lives to begin falling apart. I thought about all the people I'd counseled over the years. Women who'd been betrayed by husbands. Men who'd been abandoned by family. I'd told them all the same thing. Patience is not a weakness. It's a strategy. Now I understood what I meant. The clock stayed silent all night, and so did I. Because some storms don't announce themselves with thunder. They arrive in silence. And by the time you hear them, it's already too late to run. Nalen's first email arrived with no greeting, only a single line. Follow the small numbers. Big lies hide behind them. Every night, after my family slept, I balanced my laptop on my knees, traced transfers that didn't add up, small repeating withdrawals labeled maintenance, donations, fees. I remembered each charity that had trusted my name, each family I'd counseled through ruin. Now I was reading my own name beside the theft. Soren had been careful. Amounts small enough not to trigger alerts, frequent enough to add up over years. Marielle had handled the property transfers. Slow, legal, invisible. Together, they'd been dismantling my life for 18 months. The rain beat against the window like applause for a confession I hadn't spoken aloud yet. I downloaded every statement, every transaction, every lie, and I saved them in a folder I named Recipe Book. Because that's exactly what it was. A recipe for their destruction. The clock in the corner stayed silent, but my heartbeat was loud enough for both of us. The clock that had stopped ticking sat in a drawer for weeks. One morning, I took it to an old repair shop by the pier. The man behind the counter peered through his lenses. "Rust in the gears," he said. "Happens when time stands still too long." His words stayed with me. While he replaced the coil, I asked quietly, "Can broken time start again?" He smiled. "Only if someone wants it to." I walked home through the drizzle, realizing I did. I want it to. Want to take back every second they'd stolen, every moment they'd wished away. I passed the counseling center where I used to work. A student waved at me through the window. I waved back. Mariel had told everyone I was too sick to return. that I needed rest and isolation. But isolation wasn't a rest. It was erased. That night, I emailed the center director, told her I'd be back part-time starting Monday. She replied within an hour. "We've missed you." So had I. Missed myself. Miss the version of me that didn't count pills or hide recipe books or photograph theft in silence. At the counseling center, I returned part-time under the pretense of routine. The students were surprised to see me. So were my siblings. "I thought you needed rest," Mariel said when she found out. "I did," I replied. "Now I need the truth." Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't argue. Every conversation at work became a sermon of self-control. I learned to hide suspicion behind patience. I quoted hope like scripture, even when my hands shook. One student asked me how I stayed so calm. I told her the truth. Anger is loud, but endurance is quiet, and quiet things last longer. That evening, Soren came by with dinner. "You're overdoing it," he said. "You don't want to relapse." I smiled. "I'm stronger than I look." He set the food down carefully. His jaw tightened. For the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not concerned, fear. Because he realized what I just said. I was stronger. And that wasn't part of their plan. Sometimes divine punishment isn't thunder. It's endurance no one expects you to have. Nayland came to town pretending to audit a community grant. We met in a cafe across from the courthouse. He placed a flash drive on the saucer beneath my cup. "They've converted everything," he said quietly. "Insurance, property, even your health plan. But we can reverse it, all legally." I looked at the rain sliding down the window. Families walked by under umbrellas. Couples held hands. The world kept moving like nothing was wrong. "Then let's not rush," I said. "Let them believe the storm's still asleep." He nodded. "Patience gives us time to build the case airtight." I took the flash drive and slicked it into my coat pocket. We finished our coffee in silence. When I left, the rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds in sharp beams. I walked home slowly, feeling lighter than I had in months, because I wasn't carrying the weight alone anymore, and they had no idea the ground beneath them was already cracking. The calm before the storm isn't peaceful. It's just the moment when everything stops pretending. Soren grew restless. He started checking on me too often, counting pills, counting minutes. One night, I caught him reading my notebook, the one I kept on the kitchen counter for grocery lists. "Just making sure you're taking care of yourself," he said. "I am," I answered, better than ever. The way his jaw tightened told me he knew. The tide was changing, and for the first time, he looked like the one afraid of losing time. He left without saying goodnight. Mariel called an hour later. "Soren says you're acting strange." "I'm acting healthy," I said. "There's a difference." She paused. "We're just worried about you." "No," I thought. "You're worried about yourselves." But I didn't say that. I just thanked her and hung up. That night, the rain started again. Soft and steady. I sat by the window and watched it fall. Each drop a second they couldn't steal back. Each moment a reminder. I wasn't dying. I was waking up. And that terrified them more than anything. Mariel misplaced a key to my old car. She accused the maid. I found it later in the laundry basket. I kept it, polishing the brass until it gleamed. That key reminded me of something important. They could lock every door, but they couldn't erase what I remembered. At night, I would spin it between my fingers, whispering the new verse I'd begun to live by. Patience is the slow form of power. The clock ticked steadily now, repaired and returned to its place on the wall. Its rhythm matched my heartbeat, steady, certain, unstoppable. Soren came by one evening with papers. New insurance documents, he said. Just formalities. I looked at them carefully, read every line. Then I smiled. I'll need to have my lawyer review these first. His face went pale. Since when do you have a lawyer? Since I remembered I deserve one, I said. He left the papers on the table. But he didn't argue. That night, the rain fell harder than it had in weeks. Thunder rolled across the sky, and I slept better than I had in months. Nayland and I gathered everything. Recordings, notarized statements, scanned copies of forgeries, affidavits from the bank, testimonies from my doctor confirming I'd been too medicated to consent. He said once this is filed, they'll be summoned. I said not yet. The rain had been constant for weeks, filling the gutters, washing the streets clean. I wanted one clear day, one moment of sunlight to end it all. Because darkness hides too much. I wanted them to see everything, every document, every lie, every moment they thought I was too weak to fight back. Nayland respected my timing. We're ready when you are, he said. I looked out the window. The rain was slowing. Clouds begin to break apart. Soon, I said. Very soon. ... That night, I wrote a letter, not to them, to myself, a reminder of who I was before they tried to bury me. A guidance counselor, a sister, a daughter who'd loved her family even when they didn't deserve it, and a woman who refused to die on someone else's schedule. The morning finally came, dry and bright. We arrived at the courthouse quietly. No warning to Soren or Mariel. Inside, I watched them stumble through questions, their voices brittle under oath. Every forged line, every lie, unfolded like soaked paper. Soren tried to claim he was protecting me. Mariel said she thought I wanted her to handle things. The judge looked at the evidence, then at them, then at me. Mrs. Venn, he said, did you authorize any of these transactions? No, Your Honor, I said. My voice is steady, clear. I was recovering from a medical episode. They used my condition against me. The room went silent when the session ended. I stepped outside into the first drop of new rain. It wasn't a storm, just a soft reminder. Some people fear thunder. I'd learned to speak like rain. Quiet, steady, unstoppable. Nayland stood beside me. You did it, he said. No, I replied. We did. And now they'd have to live with what they'd done. Not in silence, but in sunlight. The hearing left ripples across the town. People whispered at the grocery line, in the church hallway, by the pier. The Venn family name had once meant generosity. Now it meant deceit. Soren vanished from the papers, stopped showing up at his office. Mariel stopped answering the door. Only I kept moving, slowly, deliberately, through each day. The rain had ended. The air smelled of iron and salt. Time at last had started again. Students at the counseling center welcomed me back fully. They asked what happened. I just said I'd been recovering. And now I have recovered. One girl asked me how I stayed strong. I thought about that question for a long time. Then I told her the truth. Strength isn't loud. It's not fists or shouting. It's waking up every morning when people expect you to stay down. That, I said, is strength. She smiled, and I realized I wasn't just teaching her. I was reminding myself. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, and for the first time in a year, I didn't flinch at the sound. I walked through the rooms that had been my prison. Every wall echoed a different version of my silence. The kitchen still held the scent of medicine and overcooked broth. The living room, the soft tick of the repaired clock. I gathered what mattered. A photograph of my father, the blue folder of evidence, the brass key that had become my talisman. Then I locked the door from the outside, left the keys on the porch. Some closures deserve ceremony. The house would be sold. Proceeds split according to what the court determined was fair. Most of it would come to me. The rest would go toward repaying what they'd stolen. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. There's a difference. Victory is loud. Freedom is quiet. I drove away slowly, watching the house shrink in my rearview mirror. By the time I reached the end of the street, it looked like any other building. Just walls and windows. No ghosts, no grief. Just a place I used to live. Naylan helped me file the restitution claim. The process was long, sterile, full of signatures and dates. But it was clean justice. Every recovered sum was redirected toward a small trust for the counseling center. Use it for someone who still believes in family, he said. I smiled. Or someone learning how to survive theirs. The rain returned that evening. Not heavy, just persistent. I sat by the window of my new apartment and listened. It didn't sound like confinement anymore. It sounded like a rhythm, like the world breathing. I thought about Soren and Mariel. I wondered if they were listening to the rain too, wondering if they regretted it. I didn't need their regret. I just needed them to know I'd survived, that I'd taken back everything they tried to steal, and that every time they heard rain, they'd think of me. Not as a victim, as the storm they underestimated. The clock ticked on the wall. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in over a year, I felt peace. The clockmaker called one afternoon. I adjusted the rhythm, he said. It keeps time better now. When I hung up, I realized he wasn't only talking about the clock. Each day, I took longer walks along the harbor, greeting people who remembered my kindness, not my illness. They asked how I'd recovered. I just said time finally started working for me instead of against me. One woman hugged me, said she'd heard about the court case. That took courage, she said. No, I replied. That took patience. Courage is loud. Patience is quiet. And quiet things last longer. She smiled and walked away. I stood there watching the waves crash against the pier. The ocean didn't rush. It didn't shout. It just kept coming, over and over, wearing down everything in its path. That's what I'd become. Not a storm, not thunder, just water, steady and relentless, the kind that carves canyons over time. I walked home slowly. The sun was setting. The sky is painted in shades of gold and rose. And I whispered a prayer I'd never said before. Thank you for making me patient enough to survive. One evening, Mariel appeared at my doorstep, eyes hollow. I lost everything, she said. They seized the accounts. Her voice trembled between guilt and pride. I handed her an old key from my pocket. This opens the storage room, I said. There are blankets there, and memories you can keep or leave. She stared at it like it burned. I didn't steal from you, she whispered. You just let Soren do it, I said. That's the same thing. She turned and walked away, didn't take the key. I watched her disappear down the street. Part of me wanted to call her back, to forgive her the way I used to forgive everything. But forgiveness without accountability is just permission to hurt you again. I closed the door, locked it, and went back to my tea. The clock ticked softly. The rain began again outside, and I realized something. Sometimes mercy is heavier than revenge, because revenge ends quickly, but mercy makes people carry what they've done for the rest of their lives. The court returned a portion of my property, but I didn't move back. I rented a small apartment above the counseling center. One room, one clock, one window. At night, I'd listen to the wind threading through the blinds. No prayers for death, no footsteps in the hall, just peace with a pulse. Victory, I learned, doesn't always arrive with applause. Sometimes it comes disguised as silence. I started teaching workshops at the center. On boundaries, on recognizing manipulation, on surviving family betrayal. The students listened like I was speaking a language they'd been waiting to hear. One girl asked if I ever felt guilty for taking my siblings to court. I thought about that. Then I said no. Guilt is for when you've done something wrong. I didn't. They did. She nodded, wrote that down in her notebook. And I realized my pain had become someone else's permission to fight back, to survive, to refuse to die quietly. The rain fell that night, soft and steady, and I slept without counting anything. With Nayland's help, I started a community program, the Haven of Keys, for people who'd lost control of their own homes, lives, trust. Each member received a small brass key on a string. Not for doors, I told them. For starters. The first rain of the new season began that night. I left the window open. Let it wash the dust from the floor. This time, the sound of rain didn't mean confinement. It meant cleansing. People came slowly at first. A woman whose husband had stolen her business. A man whose brother had forged his will. An elderly couple whose daughter had drained their savings. We sat in circles, shared stories. I cried, laughed, healed. I told them what I'd learned. That survival isn't about being the loudest. It's about being the last one standing. That patience isn't a weakness. It's power in slow motion. And that sometimes the people who pray for your death become the proof that God wanted you to live. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, and every person in that room heard it. Not as a countdown, but as a heartbeat. Morning light touched the face of the repaired clock. It ticked softly, steady as my breath. I made tea. No bitterness, no disguise. And I stood by the window, The town was waking. Somewhere far away, my siblings were learning what life feels like without someone to betray. I whispered to no one in particular. They wanted my end, but God made me their reminder. The clock ticked once more, clear and sure. Time at last belonged to me. I thought about everything I'd survived. The pills, the signatures, the locked doors, the whispers. And I realized something. Some storms come to destroy, but the ones that stay just long enough, they come to cleanse. I was the storm they prayed against, and the calm they never expected to face. I finished my tea, washed the cup, hung the brass key by the door, and walked outside into the morning light. The rain had stopped. The air smelled clean, and I was still here, still breathing, still free. That, I thought, was the greatest punishment of all. Not their suffering, but my survival.